Are you getting body slammed while driving? Is the barking so loud that it may actually be inside your head? Do you hear retching coming from the back seat? If you answered yes to any of these questions, stay with me. I can help. Seriously, put it in on the comment line if you have had these kinds of problems. If your dog is wild, freaked out, sick, barking, racing around, causing it unsafe for you to drive, let me know, because there are ways of working with this thing, and it doesn't have to be miserable for everybody. In case we haven't met, I'm veterinarian Dr. Jeff Nickel, and this is Miss America, the Nickel Family Border Collie. This little white fuzzy guy is Gaston, and over here, I can't quite see him, the gray one is Tony Hill. They keep circulating around. They'll show up. And if there's anybody who you know who could benefit from this information, please put their name in the comment line. If they can't tune in now, they can certainly, this Facebook Live will be on my website even when it's not live anymore. And also, I'm going to be mentioning some over-the-counter and some prescription medications that in some cases can make all the difference. And I'll put those specific names in my Facebook page after we're done with this Facebook Live. So you can go there and find that specific information. So I'd like to start by reading a story. And by the way, just to make sure that we don't have any technical problems, if you can hear me loud and clear, would you hit the wow button? And if you find this information helpful or just enjoyable or entertaining, hit the heart button so I know I'm doing something at least a little bit useful. And any questions at any point along the way while we're talking about this, please put them in there and I'll answer them and interrupt what I'm doing, because whatever it takes to provide useful information that helps people and their pets, because this can be a real problem. There goes Tony, so he'll be back. So this is a question that came into my column some time ago. I get this one pretty often, and I get this in the exam room as well in my behavior consultation practice. But so this is kind of a typical one. And here's the question. I need help controlling my Sonny in the car. I had big dogs all my life, but never had this problem. And it's getting scary to travel and worry about the distraction. In all other situations, he responds to speech commands and treats. In this, he's oblivious to my existence. Yeah, that dog's freaked out. That's the problem. So, I, of course, try to lighten the mood here, when I say oblivious to your existence, eh? Well, I've been to that movie. You might as well be raising children. Well, out of control pacing and barking in the car is a common problem. Many dogs have a strong need to interact with everything they see flashing past them. For some, the behavior can be influenced by fear of all those strange noises and people and scary-looking dogs they see out the window. But if Sonny is drooling, he may have motion sickness on top of it. There is no amount of scolding, arm waving, or swearing that's going to help. And those threats to turn this car around and go right back home, that doesn't make a difference either. So you can tether this big boy in the back seat and cover the rear windows to diminish the intensity of visual arousal triggers that the most reliable approach would have to be to have Sonny ride in a crate. Now, a lot of people are using wire crates nowadays, and they need to have that den-like feel for a dog to take that innate security that they get from a snug little enclosure. Doesn't work in every case, but you can, if you have a wire crate, you can cover it with a sheet or a towel, leaving the front open so the dog can see out. They also have these fabric collapsible crates that easy to store. They collapse pretty flat, and you can store them at home. You can get them at pet supply stores. You can order them online. And what's nice about these fabric collapsible crates is that they have windows, at least some of them do. You need the kind that has windows that zip so that you can cover the sides and the back of it and lower the door and zip it so that it's open at the bottom so the dog can see out. But when he looks out the bottom of the door of a collapsible crate, what he's going to see is the inside of the car. What he won't see is what's going on outside the car. And we'll talk in a few minutes about how to distinguish which of these methods of management is going to work best for your dog, because there are other things you need to figure out. And your veterinarian can help you with this, but you may be able to figure these things out yourself. I'll help you with that. So, Sonny's body signaling would be telling. I suggest, and this goes for anybody, you can post a short video on my Facebook page, and I'll decipher the dog's body signaling for you, or a cat for that matter. If he's freaked out, you can give him the natural anti-anxiety supplement Anxetane. And I have that right here. Let me turn the camera around. I will show it to you. There you go. And this is, as you can see from the label, it's chewable, and it's a plant amino acid called L-theanine. Hello, Cindy. Great to see you. This particular box is for small dogs and cats, but they make it for medium-sized dogs and large dogs too. And oh, here, I turned off my special light. There we go. And it's chewable. And this is something that for mild to moderate fears and anxieties, you can give it every single day, twice a day. If it's a one-off situation, like an unusual trip in the car, then you can start it a few days ahead, and the instructions are in the box on how to do that, and it can become effective pretty darn quickly. So, good product, one of many. For real severe problems, this is not going to quite get it done. Mild to moderate fears and anxieties, including those that are ongoing, you can give it to a dog very safely, or a cat, twice a day, and they like the taste. All right, so that's one way to go. And you can get it from your veterinarian, by the way, and if your veterinarian doesn't have it, they can order it for you. Okay. An adaptable pheromone collar. I don't have one of those to show you right now, but pheromones can be very helpful. They are a synthetic analog of naturally occurring pheromones that are secreted by specialized glands in the lower abdomen of a lactating mother dog. These glands are switched on by the hormone shifts that occur right about the time that the mother delivers the babies. And for newborn puppies in the wild, it keeps them calm so they don't squawk and raise a lot of ruckus that would attract predators. So this pheromone in dogs is a survival adaptation, and the synthetic analog of it is in the product Adaptil. It comes as a plug-in diffuser, which people have used a AC/DC converter in the cigarette lighter of their car. And you can plug it in there, and you can have this thing in the car. It also comes in a collar. In a small enclosed space, the diffuser is really best, and it can help. But it's not one of those things that's going to solve the whole thing all by itself. But it can help. It can make a difference. So I would suggest they do that. And you can get Adaptil in a spray, by the way, and spray it inside the crate, and that can be helpful. And the other point that I made to her is that if this dog, Sonny, is drooling, and we're going to talk about this again in a minute, there may be a nausea problem, and I suggested that she use an over-the-counter product called Dramamine 2. There's another one called Bonine. These have the medication in it is called Meclizine, M-E-C-L-I-Z-I-N-E. And Meclizine, over-the-counter, no prescription needed. And again, I will put that and dosages on my Facebook page after we're done with this Facebook Live in a little while, so you'll know how much to give. Okay? So, safety matters, by the way. Dogs who are frantic for whatever the reason and they interfere with your driving, boy, you've got to deal with that. So let me talk about that briefly. If a crate is not going to work for your dog, then what I'm going to encourage you to do is get a harness that is meant to be snapped into the safety belt of the car in the back seat. Not only would it keep your dog from racing back and forth and getting in your lap, getting under your feet when you're trying to work the pedals in the car, getting in front of you, you can't see out the windshield. These things happen and they cause accidents. But beyond all that, they sometimes feel better. They can move around a little bit and they can look out the window. For those who feel better looking out the window, they don't all. So let's talk about some of the causes on these things. Motion sickness is a big one, and it's overlooked. Motion sickness occurs because naturally, and this goes for dogs, cats, people, pretty much all of us, there are two systems in the body that control our equilibrium and our balance. And both of them occur in the brain. One is the vestibular apparatus in the inner ear, and that's in the brain. And this is it measures and manages motion. Okay. And then there's another system that if our eyes are closed, we don't see it, but when our eyes are open, it's the nerves that go to and from the eyes, the ocular system in the brain, and that takes in different messages. And if all of it is in sync, then we don't have a problem. But when they are competing and there are different accelerators, and that is what it is, that are measured by these in the brain, and they conflict, then the brain gets confused and we get motion sickness. And that's why not everybody is prone to it, or sometimes young kids and puppies are more prone to it because their neurologic system is immature. And many people and dogs outgrow it because the system matures and it all works all right. But there are some adult dogs and some adult people who have suffered pretty badly from motion sickness. Well, we can get all that straightened out with something like meclizine, which is Dramamine. Regular Dramamine has something called dimenhydrinate, Dramamine 2, Bonine, and there are others that have meclizine, and that's the one that really is going to work well. It's very safe. You can give more than the recommended dose, and they can get a little bit sleepy, but it can make a very big difference. And you know, we love our pets, and we don't want them uncomfortable and miserable. But when there's motion sickness, typically these dogs are not racing around and barking and all that stuff. They're like just hanging their head. Some of them will get on the floor, which makes good sense. Some of them don't. But they're so nauseated they'll drool. Some will retch. Occasionally you'll get vomiting. Might even get diarrhea. So if your dog is that miserable, you want to treat that as a motion sickness problem. All right? So Serenia, by the way, and again, in my Facebook page, I'll put it all in there, is a prescription medication that your veterinarian almost certainly has on the shelf, and it's spelled with a C, C-E-R-E-N-I-A. And it's one of these wonder drugs. It's relatively new. We've had it for 5-10 years. And it is something that is very good against pain as well. It's very good against the nausea and vomiting that can occur with chemotherapy in dogs. Dogs who have chronic nausea issues for other reasons, but it's also excellent for motion sickness. Like most of these things, it's best given prior to the event, but your veterinarian can provide this for you and you can have it on hand and give it ahead of a car ride. So if it's a motion sickness problem, Serenia really, that stuff actually does hit the home run. I mean, that's wonderful stuff. Okay, so let me know if your dog has got this kind of a green behind the gills miserable nausea thing. Put it in the comment line and let's talk about it a little bit while we're doing this Facebook Live. I'm happy to discuss it. All right, so car travel anxiety, what does that look like? These dogs aren't happy either. Very often they're panting, and they might drool too, but they are typically watching very carefully outside. These are dogs who they very often cannot take their, thank you for the hearts, I'm glad this is helpful. They cannot take their eyes off what's going on outside the window of the car. Somebody sent me a question. I'm trying to find it here. It's not coming up quite yet. It will. Bear with me. Anyway, because that's just driving them crazy, and it's triggering their anxiety. But anxiety, you know, don't forget, by definition, it is an unfounded, illogical worry about what might be lurking around the next corner, and you sort of can't take your eyes off it. And that's a problem. And so very simply, you can prevent the input of that really unpleasant sensory, what the dog sees and what the dog hears. There's a product called a Thunder Cap. And a Thunder Cap, you can get these online. They're about 20 bucks. And you put a little piece of food and the dog puts its face inside. You want the dog to be able to choose to put this on. I always discourage people from just pushing a muzzle on a dog or pushing a Thunder Cap on the dog's head because they're already scared. You want to teach the dog that by putting her nose in it, she gets this little tasty tidbit, and you very slowly will teach her that eventually it's going to go on over her face. And it's sort of like walking around the yard with a t-shirt over your face. You know, if you did that outside, you wouldn't bump into a tree, but it diminishes distance vision. You would not drive your car or go for a run with a t-shirt over your face, probably for other good reasons too. But if your dog is wearing a Thunder Cap, you've reduced her ability to see in the distance, and that dog is, well, you know what, that other question is not coming up on my iPad. Carolyn will work on that. Thank you for that. I don't know what the problem is, but I'll answer that question as soon as I can find it. Anyway, so a Thunder Cap can help, but like so many of these things, use them in combination. You do something that works with other things that work. There it is. Thank you very much, Carolyn. Whoops. So, okay. So this is, there we go. Oh, wonderful. We've got a few things. Okay. So Elizabeth, oh, hello, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming. And her dog is like that. And there you go. She goes crazy when she sees people or other dogs from the car. And that dog has probably got travel anxiety, Elizabeth, in the car. Now, if you were to drive your car no faster than about 5 miles an hour, and you had all the windows removed from the car, the dog could manifest its anxiety in a sort of quasi-healthy way by jumping out of the car. I'm not being serious here. But it would go out and investigate all these people and other dogs and chase around and then run along next to the car and hop in and watch and jump back out again. And it could manifest its agitation in ways that were pretty healthy. But of course, we have glass windows in our car, and the dog can see out, but dogs don't intrinsically understand glass windows. They don't get it. They see what's going on, and they, by rights, should be able to interact with it and chase off those other dogs or whatever. And we're not letting them do it. And so avoidance is really the best way to go with this thing. We absolutely must prevent the dog from freaking out by preventing it from seeing and ideally hearing all that nonsense. So back to that collapsible fabric crate where you can zip the windows down so the dog doesn't see out of the car. And or you could try a thunder cap and prevent the dog from seeing. If you have your dog belted in with a special dog harness, these are not hard to find, you can get them on the internet, that's belted into the back seat, and you have window tint on the sides of the back seat, then the dog isn't going to be able to see out those windows. But of course, you're not going to put that on your windshield, are you? And the dog can still see out there. And so I'm a real believer in the crate. And also, anxiety is a real problem. It is a brain disorder. And if the neural circuits and the neurochemicals worked properly, none of us would have anxiety that caused us trouble. Boy, raise your hand if you've got an anxiety problem. To one degree or another, almost everybody has something that causes them anxiety. And for some people, and some dogs, and some cats, it's debilitating. So those severe cases, medications can be a lifesaver. And it doesn't have to be an anti-anxiety medication that's given every single day. It can be as needed. And so there's one called Trazodone, Trazodone. I'll put that in the Facebook page after we're done with this event. Your veterinarian can prescribe it. It's not over the counter, but it's quite safe. And you can give that an hour or two before getting ready to put your dog in the car. I suggest closer to 2 hours to make sure it's really on board before the dog sees you getting ready to load him into the car. And we've got a wide range of dosing with Trazodone, and it's very, very safe. Drugs in the benzodiazepine class. These are things like Valium, Xanax, Ativan, which is lorazepam. These are quick acting. They'll get on board in about 40 minutes after they're given. And they're quite safe. They can be addictive, but you're only going to use it as needed, so we're not going to worry about that. And we've got a wide dosing range with those too. So, and we can use these things in combination. Miss America, I want you to stay with me, girlfriend. Will you sit, please? Thank you, darling. And here's something else. This is called Sileo, and you may have seen me mention this in the past. This is a prescription medication. If your veterinarian does not have it, he or she can order it, Sileo. This is not a tablet or a capsule. It's a gel that you comes in a syringe. There's no needle. It's not an injectable. But you deposit this, and look, Miss America says, "Oh, I know that thing," because this girl's daddy gives it to her before thunderstorms, and that's really what it's meant for. But it can be very helpful in the car. And this stuff, you give it between the lower lip and the gum, right down in there, and you, like, let me put my finger in Miss America's mouth here. I'm not going to give it because she doesn't need it right now. There you go. Whoops. Now hold still, sweet pie. There you go. Go right back in there. And you close their mouth and hold their head up for a couple of minutes, and it absorbs across the mucous membranes in the lip or against the gum. And about 20 minutes later, this stuff's on board. And it can make a very big difference. And you can use it in combination with Trazodone and or benzodiazepines like Valium, Xanax, that kind of stuff. These dogs need help, and we understand how these medications work, and we know how to use them safely. And I'll even put doses on the Facebook page. Not that you can get these things on your own, but let's solve that problem, okay? So you prevent the sensory input, and you give that dog something to preempt the anxiety. Now there's a third category, and this is the one that's probably the most challenging, but there's no real brain disorder that's associated with it, and that's unruly behavior. These are dogs who are just out of control. They're not necessarily anxious at all, and you can tell by watching, not if you're driving, but if you're riding as a passenger, these dogs appear confident. They're not freaked out with their tail tucked like an anxious dog. They're not trembling like an anxious dog might. They're simply not going to drool the way an anxious dog might, or that a motion sick dog almost always does. They're not going to vomit. These dogs are, by golly, they're going to chase these other dogs off, and they are just out of control. And it's in part, again, because of the barrier frustration of the window. And these dogs, too, do much better riding in a fabric crate with the windows zipped down, or wearing a thunder cap, or all of the above. But anti-anxiety medications for a dog, who is unruly and rambunctious, are not going to make any difference at all. If a doctor misdiagnoses anxiety and prescribes an anti-anxiety medication for somebody who doesn't have that problem, you know what happens? Nothing happens. That's what happens. So, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if you have thought that your dog was anxious and your veterinarian prescribed an anti-anxiety medication and it didn't help, then we probably don't have anxiety. We probably have just unruly, out of control behavior. And these dogs might bark and run excitedly around, and they can be the most dangerous with getting in your way of driving safely. And so they need to be prevented from seeing what's going on. So, back to that crate. There's another product called mutt muffs, by the way. They look like ear muffs that people wear in the cold weather. Very comfortable, very well-made product, and they reduce the input of noise. So if it's an anxious dog, mutt muffs can be helpful. If it's wild and rambunctious and crazy, it's not going to make any difference, okay? Because the dog's just out of control. Obedience work can help those dogs if you can set the dog up for success by not letting the dog see out the window, and you can give the dog a down command and reinforce. And by the way, these food toys, I'm a real believer in these. Something like, honey, will you stay put, please? Thank you. Lots of different kinds of food toys. This particular one is called the Twist and Treat. There are lots of them, but I like this because it's quite versatile. And, it's hollow, and you can put dry food or canned. And if you put canned food in it and then screw it back together, if the dog's not real well accustomed, you can leave it pretty far gapped apart. But if the dog's figured it out, then you make it more challenging, so it takes them longer to extract the food by screwing it closer together. But if you preload it with canned dog food and then put it in a Ziploc and freeze it overnight, then you take it out of the Ziploc and you can put it in that collapsible fabric crate. And if you've withheld a meal, so the dog is food motivated, you're not starving your dog, but your dog's hungry and motivated to extract the food and scavenge, much as your dog would in a free living, feral situation, which is largely how they survive. And the dog's extracting food instead of losing its mind. Okay, maybe you won't lose your mind that way too. Okay, so all of these things can be used in combination, and long trips. Even if your dog doesn't have a travel problem, why not keep your dog occupied, enjoying itself, instead of being bored to tears? So a food toy is a very positive thing. One of the most valuable things you can do is just think kindness. You can get so frustrated, understandably. You're trying to drive, the dog's all over you like Velcro, barking its crazy brains out, and you're about to lose your mind as well. And you can, swatting your dog and yelling and all that stuff. But one of the big problems with a response to an undesirable behavior, in other words, behavior you don't want, and you respond to it, one of the big problems with that is that, here's a difference that dogs have compared with people, is that they believe that they earned that response from their leader. That if you say anything when your dog does anything, if it's a good behavior and you respond, then what gets rewarded gets repeated. But the dog regards any response from its leader as a reinforcer, as a reward. It believes that it earned it. So if your dog is freaking out and doing something horrible, and you're scolding and yelling and swatting, some dogs think you're playing, but they all believe that they earned that response from their leader. And again, what gets rewarded gets repeated, and that behavior will reoccur. So if you don't like it, you absolutely must ignore it and set the dog up for success. But if you look through these three primary categories of this wild, travel, bad behavior in the car: motion sickness, travel anxiety, pardon me, drooling, and unruly behavior, well, we treat them all differently. Although there are some things that we can use for any of them, like preventing a dog from seeing out of the car. But you want to figure that out, and your veterinarian should be able to help you with this and do the right thing. I really want dogs to have choices, and cats too. I want them to feel like they can trust their leader, that we're going to look out for their best needs, and we're going to do what it takes to help them have a secure life. And if we mete out punishment and harsh treatment from the person who at different times we're trying to build a loving, trusting bond, oh my goodness, we're creating confusion. And it's stressful for everybody, and not just the cat or the dog, but for us too. And of course, there are times when you don't need to take your pet with you, and if they have a bad time in the car, and every time they ramp up that agitation, they're actually practicing and rehearsing these neural sequences in the brain, and they actually get more skilled and faster at bad behaviors. So you don't feel like you have to do it. Now, if you need to take your dog and travel with your dog, I'll give you a good example. This is a man lived in Los Alamos, New Mexico, in the northern part of the state, who was a hunting and fishing guide, and he had a truck, and he carried his equipment, and he had this wonderful black lab who went with him everywhere and traveled inside the car, inside the truck with him. And then on that mountain road, if you're familiar with Los Alamos, there's some blind curves, had an accident. And nobody got seriously hurt, but the dog was badly shaken and deathly afraid of riding with him. Well, it meant a great deal to this man to have his dog with him. I mean, it was this man's best friend. It was a hunting dog to boot. And he came to me and said, my goodness, I've got to fix this if it's at all possible. And so what we did with his dog was gradually desensitize this dog. He was classically conditioned, an emotion-based reaction that was triggered by this fear that occurred with that nasty accident that they had. And we taught the dog very gradually, starting out with the man's wife's small car. It was not the same as his big truck. And we taught the dog that it could go inside the back seat of this car without the engine running, with it just parked, and get some food, and then come back out on its choice. And gradually it learned that it could hang out in the back seat. Thank you for those hearts. I hope this is helpful. And snack on a food toy and spend more time in the car learning that maybe this isn't so bad after all. And then we had them start the engine in his wife's sedan, and the dog learned that, okay, I can feel a little vibration, a little bit nerve-wracking at first, but started to choose to go back into the back seat of the car and enjoy a food toy and get snacks. It's a male or female person was in the back seat and welcoming the dog in there. Made it easy for the dog to say, I think this is safe. And then gradually we graduated to having the dog get into the truck again. Again, engine off, just parked in the driveway, and then gradually taught the dog, okay, sometimes the engine's going to be running. And we finally advanced to him driving slowly around the neighborhood. And very gradually the dog got back to being able to just take trips in the car and these hunting and fishing guide trips again. It took about 6 months. And really demonstrated this man and his wife's kindness. They wanted the best for this dog, and they knew that if he left the dog home, the dog would miss him. This had become an important part of the dog's life just as much as it was his person, and they needed to get back to normal. And so very gradually, with the structure that I provided and custom fitted for that dog, it all went well in the end. Kindness matters, doesn't it? And we love pets, or we wouldn't be doing any of these Facebook Lives. I would not have gone to veterinary school. But if you think about, okay, there are differences with this other species, and even if the behavior drives you sort of crazy, you have to step back from the whole thing and say, what's going on with this pet? And what can I do to set him up for success? So build that foundation of trust. and try very hard not to cross the line. We make mistakes. It's okay. And one of the best things about having pets in my life is I've learned forgiveness from them. Like everybody who's been around for any length of time, you've been wronged. People have treated you badly and unfairly. It happens to me. It happens to everybody, doesn't it? And not only has it happened to each of us, I bet most every one of us has been guilty of saying or doing the wrong thing to a person in the past, and we feel bad about it. But we can forgive ourselves, and we can learn that because our pets forgive us. We make mistakes, and they don't move out. They're there, and they give us a second chance, and we can learn from them, and we can be better pet parents, and we can treat ourselves better, and we can treat other people better too. So I hope all this has been helpful to you. Any questions come up, by all means, go to my Facebook page, and you're welcome to put a question in there. And sometimes those are the ones that I put in my newspaper column because they can be helpful to a lot of other people. And by the way, you can get all of this stuff every week on Tuesday mornings, recording, and my newspaper column from the week before goes out to my subscribers of my website, and it costs nothing to subscribe. Just go to drjeffnicol.com, drjeffnicol.com, and at the bottom of the homepage you can subscribe, and when you do, I'll send you, at no charge, my free at-home pet first aid and CPR guide, which is worth printing out and sticking to the fridge just in case you need it, like right now. And I, trying to bring out the best in pets and their people, and we have a good time doing it. So again, thank you for spending this time with me. And there might have been one more question. Carolyn, did somebody just send something else to me? There we go. Elizabeth Tora, I thought my dog, I think that's it. I thought my dog was, enjoying her car rides. It's like she's hunting everyone from the car. Yeah, and you know what people also notice, Elizabeth? That with repetition, these things get worse. We've all used the saying, practice makes perfect. Well, there's this adage in veterinary behavior medicine. I wish I could take credit for it, and it goes like this. If it can be predicted, it should be prevented, because practice makes perfect. You look at a highly skilled athlete or musician, and you say, my goodness, what talent that person has. Oh, sure, there may be some God-given genetic predisposition for being that agile, that athletic, that artistic, but it's practice. Thousands of repetitions that makes it possible for that major league pitcher to throw that changeup to the inside corner every single time he wants to. He's done it thousands of times. Well, if you allow your dog to ramp up and just go crazy hundreds or thousands of times in the car, they get worse or better, depending on how you look at it. And avoidance, that really matters. So we set them up for success. So thank you again for being part of this. The cats are on the floor now because the treats, I guess, we've run out. Miss America is still here. So thank you for being here with me. Thank you, boys, my cats, and thank you for tuning in. And be safe. Please wear your mask and stay 6 feet away from everybody except the people in your house. And if you don't have people in your house, I know you have pets in your house. And you can be as affectionate as you want with them, and they're safe.